This is my morphing question. Every time I hear you speak, it seems to change a little bit based on what you were just saying. I want spirits who are coming into human bodies to remember who they are enough such that they are able to have conscious, deliberate experiences and life choices.
No, you don't.
I do want that. And I also want...
Isn't it interesting that we just did our very best to head that question off?
I also want the socialization process not to train us away from who we really are.
No, you don't. Well, maybe you do, and it's all right if you do,
Okay.
but tell us what it is you want, the first part, and why you want it.
I want spirits coming into human bodies to be able to remember who they really are.
Well, they do remember who they really are, so give us more. What do you mean?
Such that we can have conscious experiences. I liken it to the football game. Football is not a game that I approve of. You know, it's very.
Well, we just asked the question.
Yeah.
We just asked the question. Who do you think's happier, you or your dog? In other words, and you're wanting, in other words, the beasts of your planet come forth knowing who they are. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're wanting?
Well, I've heard you say that we as babies, like when the spirit's new in the body, I've heard you say that we remember who we are and that gradually we get trained away from it. And to me, that seems to be the cause.
You have to remember, what you are asking for is that source energy be who it is and know all it knows and come into a body and know all of that. And then we say, and then what? In other words, without some contrasting edge, there would be no asking, so there would be no expansion.
But it feels like a cruel world to me then, because like if the slate gets erased,
is it cruel?
clean,
Is it cruel to, as you have a child who has an uncomfortable moment, we know you would like that child not to have had that uncomfortable moment. Most people who love this woman whose pet died would say, if there was any way that I could have kept your pet from dying, I would have done it to have saved you the pain of that. But then she would have missed the vortex that was created out of that. You see, in other words, you just can't get around it. Your expansion comes from variety. But what makes the variety and the creation of life painful is that you're not aware of your vibrational nature.
well, if we could just remember that without being, like, not remember the whole of the soul. I would agree with you. I don't want to remember everything I've done.
But really, do you think that anyone ever, do you see these little ones, do they line up and say, I like feeling bad? Have you met a child or an adult, no matter how old they are, do you know anyone who deliberately chooses to feel bad?
No.
So don't you think the guidance system is active within them?
It's active, but we don't know it. I mean, I didn't know about it until I started reading the Conversations with God material and I started studying you. I mean, it's like I had emotions, but I didn't know that there was a guidance system and I didn't know how to control it or direct it. And it's only since coming to these studies, what I'd like for it to be.
But it's interesting because as you watch the beasts of your planet. Now, we talked the other day about the deconstruction of thought, about the bringing the chatter out of it, about the coming more to the vibrational core of who you are. And today we've had a good beginning as we talk about the beasts of your planet and how the animals are much more in sync with who they are. And most people, if they were listening to this conversation, would acknowledge that humans aren't really wanting to be like the animals in the sense that they aren't thinking. And the reason that you feel that so strongly is because the intention that you held as you decided to come forth was in an understanding of the value of choices. We agree with you that being away from who you are for long periods of time is an unnecessary and an unpleasant and an unnecessary and an unpleasant and an unnecessary state of being. In other words, we don't wish for you to be out of your alignment with who you are. But we cannot release our understanding of the launching of rockets that comes from those choices. And so, as more of you are living consciously and wanting with more precision to live in alignment with who you are, more of you are asking more of those kinds of questions, and more like us are coming forward to help you to understand what to do. But don't ask for the intention that you came in with to be different. Just figure out how to align with it by paying attention to your guidance system. Esther says from time to time, because she is so loving the way she feels most of the time, and so loving her understanding of things, it's easier to look into this world knowing what she now knows. It's easier to be optimistic and to feel the well-being of all things knowing what she now knows. And every now and again, as she thinks about the longevity of her experience, and she thinks about what it was like before she knew, which is really relatively recent for her and for all of you to know it to the extreme that you now know it, Esther will think, I don't know about the idea of starting again. In other words, being born again and not remembering again in order to discover again. But friends, we ask you the pointed question just now. Would you rather have launched a rocket that you can't reach, or would you rather be standing in a place of that which you call completion? And if you're still saying, I want to stand in completion and I'm not reaching, then you haven't even come close to connecting in this moment to the eternal expansive knowledge that you hold, you see. You will never ever be happy with any sense of standing still even for a moment. And we know you don't think that's what you're asking for, but if your wish were fulfilled, that is what you would be getting. Don't worry, it'll never happen, but that is what you would be getting. So now ask it again. The first question again. Abraham, question. I want spirit to come forth into physical body, and what does it say?
And remember who they are enough such that they are conscious.
By the way they feel. Remember who they are enough by the guidance within them. To remember that they are love enough that when they witness something other than love, they feel the offness of it. That they remember the worthiness of their being enough that when someone calls them unworthy, they feel the offness of it. That they remember the well-being enough that when some fearmonger points disaster in their face, that they feel the offness of it. You remember, you just have to have a little bit of time to catch up with what you remember. And you know what happens? You have to reach the place where you are not willing to feel that gut-wrenching disconnection. That has to become the dominant intention before any of you will remember, you see. Because words don't teach. You'll remember. You know who's less likely to remember? Those who are born into the feathered nests.
Really?
Those who are born just like you want them to be born. Born into feathered nests where everything is just hunky-dory for them all the time. Somebody else is paving everything for them. So they are never confronted with that vibrational variance between who they really are and who they're being in that moment. In other words, they lose their way. But when you feel that gut-wrenching disconnection as you're faced with something that the whole of you knows is different than what you're seeing, and it happens enough that finally you say, nothing in all of my world is as important as me feeling good, so you're able to let go of whatever that is, because you can't wrestle it to the ground and kill it, you cannot control it, you cannot fix it, and so you let it go, and then in the letting go of it, you're restored to the vibration of your beingness. Do that from time to time and you will remember nothing is more important than my vibrational alignment. You were born with the most masterful, precise, perfect guidance system of knowledge, of knowing, of remembering who you are that could ever be imagined by all that is, you see.
Thank you.